In this podcast, I'm going to be talking about the findings from my research inquiry that I did last semester, answering the question, how can teacher questions facilitate critical dialogue in culturally diverse classrooms? All of the findings in the research that I found, the research was done in classrooms with ENL learners, English as new language learners. So even though the findings can be generalized to all teaching practice, it's important to know that that's where the findings came from. The essential elements of dialogic teaching is an idea that I got from Alexander's book, Towards Dialogic Thinking. And I have a visual that I created that will portray the understanding that I came to as I looked through the themes of dialogic teaching through my research. The 5 essentials that Alexander says define dialogic classrooms are these: purposeful, supportive, collective, reciprocal, and cumulative. The purposeful element of a dialogic classroom is the idea that a teacher creates her classroom with a specific educational goal in mind. And this specific educational goal would be having critical dialogue in the classroom. This is a type of teaching where a teacher has to be flexible with their daily lesson plans, understanding that if a student's questions require a teacher to answer those questions in order to facilitate dialogue, the teacher may need to push off the lesson later. But understanding that that the goals of that lesson can be met over time. It's also important when thinking about the purposeful element of a classroom. That some researchers say that a teacher can plan specific questions that they'll ask during discussion in order to meet specific educational goals. And so I think the balance of both these things can be had in a purposeful classroom, both flexibleness, but also planning intentional questions, so that critical dialogue can be the purpose of the classroom. The next element is supportive. Alexander calls a supportive element of a classroom a culture where students can contribute to classroom dialogue without fear of embarrassment. And a lot of this is creating a culture of respect in the classroom, so that all students feel supported, that they feel like they can speak what they're thinking out loud. And a big part of this is a teacher's perspective of students as collaborators in learning. And as students see teachers as their collaborators, as they see teachers approximate and make mistakes, they'll be more willing to speak in class, approximating and making mistakes also. Boyd realized in her findings that when students negotiate meaning and explore concepts in a supportive classroom, they do it very confidently and are able to do it with meaning. And that it's also important to make sure you're supporting students who may feel different from the rest of their classmates. McNeil found that ENL students felt that it was difficult to answer high-order questions in whole group discussion, so he suggests that you scaffold their learning so they can answer those questions one-on-one, and then in small groups, and then eventually in the whole class. The next element is the collective element of dialogic teaching. And Alexander explains this as the intentional purpose and the intentional focus in a classroom to learn together instead of in isolation, with an idea of interthinking, that everyone's not learning their own thing at their own time, but because everyone is learning around you, all the students are learning around each other, they can bounce off each other's thinking and make meaning together and pursue learning together. And the possibilities of this mean that students can have richer meaning and see beyond their own lives. And it's important also that in this collective atmosphere, students can then communicate with their teachers, so that if they're confused about a learning task, they can even communicate that to their teachers. And so they really are able to take responsibility of their learning in this atmosphere. The next element of dialogic teaching is the reciprocal element. And Alexander explains this as the way that a learning community listens to the ideas of others and considers multiple viewpoints. Alexander believes this is important so that all students can interact with each other and so they can voice their personal ideas. And these are themes that I found in Al-Zarani and Al-Bargi in their research. And a way for this to be built in the classroom is for a teacher to model that listening to their students when they really take their students' contributions seriously. And it allows students to see beyond their own viewpoints when they feel like they can, when they're taught to listen and when they see their teacher listening beyond their own lives. And it enables also the classroom to be a place where students can hear viewpoints that aren't represented in the classroom. And this reciprocalness is what enables students to build off of each other's thinking as they listen intently and listen for the sake of listening. And it's also a key part of scaffolding in the classroom. The students can build off each other's thinking. The final element is the cumulative element of the dialogic classroom. And Alexander explains this as the meaning that the contributions of students and teachers in the classroom are contingent upon the history of the classroom and their specific learning experiences. So I think of the way that when a teacher is giving examples in a class, they might refer to a book that the class has read in the past or that they all really enjoyed, or a field trip that they went on. And so really embracing that fully, using the resources that you have in your classroom of student contributions and of past learning experiences, that the students will understand to make lines of thinking continuous and meaningful, and so that students are continually revisiting what they've already learned, solidifying what they've learned, and learning in a very authentic way. Boyd and Rubin found in their research that contingency of a teacher's questioning is more important than the specific types of questions that they ask, and that sometimes categorizing those types of questions can hinder a teacher from focusing on being contingent and building their questions off of the students' contributions in the classroom. But when those contributions are built upon, then the questioning of the teacher becomes meaningful, relevant, and effective. Poe also talks about how important it is that the context of the specific institution that the students are in and the greater learning community is part of this cumulative aspect, that the students are embedded in a community and in a real life circumstance. And so drawing that in to build upon in the classroom, and how important it is to have interpersonal relationships in order for teaching to be cumulative, in order for questions to be cumulative, in order for the listening to happen. And that listening is critical if there's going to be contingent discourse in the classroom. Otherwise, there won't be anything to build upon if there isn't listening. And Chen talks about how important it is that teachers have mastery over their content so that they can build on the students' contributions while also guiding them towards specific learning goals. So that's a summary of the themes that I found as I researched teacher questioning in culturally diverse classrooms. And that a teacher is going to plan for everything in their classroom. They're going to plan for their classroom to be supportive, collective, reciprocal, and cumulative. And the purpose and the plan is for critical dialogue. And knowing that critical dialogue can't happen unless there is listening and building upon each other, which has to be in a place where students know they can share without being embarrassed or being judged for what they're sharing. And with this, students can then learn to use language and to speak and to listen and interact in literacy club in an authentic and significant way.